is Alyosha Praznik, and tonight I'm hosting Taso Du Val, programmer, entrepreneur, and an amazing person who works in Silicon Valley. Hi.
Hello.
Okay, so could you introduce yourself and tell us what you do right now?
Sure, my name is Taso Du Val, and I run a company called Taso.
Can you tell us something more about that company and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So the company was started in around August 2010, and basically started it by subcontracting engineers from different countries to companies here in Silicon Valley. And after the operation started going, it actually became quite labor intensive. So I teamed up with my current partner, Brendan, and now we're running the company. There's about 18 people full-time that are involved. We've broke $1 million in revenue. We're doing about almost 100K in recurring revenue every single month at the moment. And took some investment from one of the co-founders of Facebook, Zynga, one of the Rockefellers, and that's basically where we are today. We're currently in the process of raising another small round that's relevant to that, but yeah, the company's up and running, and it's been about 18 months now, and that's where we're at.
So can you explain us more about that website? Actually, what is the main idea and so on?
Sure. So what we do is we find really high caliber engineers and development shops all over the world, and we create partnerships and a network of really high caliber talent and subcontract them to companies all over the world. And so if you're a company looking for a group of engineers or even a single engineer, we can, in an on-demand style, subcontract them to you as the company, and you can work with them with policies that we have, like insurance policies, to make sure that they work really fluidly and smoothly. So for example, we have a 2-week risk-free trial period for every single developer that's in the system, or that's within our network. And so if you use any of those developers, you have a risk-free trial period. And so that's a huge thing to a lot of companies that are working with us, as it kind of shows that we're putting our money where our mouth is. And so, yeah, I think that's a big thing.
Okay. Can you tell me what have you done already in your life, and which companies have you worked in?
Sure. So I worked at the first company, internet company, was a company called Ticket Fusion, where I did systems administration and network engineering work. Then I started a company called SideChat, which the investors ended up acquiring. I worked at Photolog as the lead systems engineer and architect, which was acquired by High Media. Then I worked at Slide as the lead data architect, which was acquired by Google. And then I started another company, which actually I spent about 1.5 years on, and it didn't go anywhere. But my co-founder ended up starting a company called Game Closure, which, if you read TechCrunch, just got a $100 million acquisition offer from Zynga. And I think it really gives a testament to the impact that the technology that we were working on. Because everything's not a complete failure in that sense. And then I ended up becoming part of the founding team of Artsy, ART.SY, and we ended up raising $7 million from Rupert Murdoch, Dasha Zakova, Keith Rabois, Jack Dorsey, all sorts of other investors. And now I transitioned to Taso, where that's currently what's going on. So that's not everything that I've done, but it gives you a brief, high-level overview of the.
Nice. Now I would like to ask you some personal questions, like how would you describe yourself, and how would you describe your typical work day? How does it look like?
Yeah, sure. So a typical workday for me usually starts off with a couple of phone calls to either clients or recruiters. We have a team that's distributed all over the world, and we have to keep them in sync with what's going on. We actually couldn't run the company if we had all the labor in the US, because it would be too much cost. And so we have guys in Russia, Brazil, in the Midwest who are doing the recruiting and the screening and the sourcing and even some of the operations. So we have to sync everyone up and just have a high level of unity for everyone in the system and for everyone in the company. And so basically it starts off with a couple of phone calls, either conference calls, and yeah, and then basically, syncing up with our development team. We have a platform which we're currently working on, and we have a handful of developers internally that we have as a team, really great guys who, we're working on the product day in and day out, all the time. And so, yeah, just refining the product with the team and going over, what are the next steps for the platform and how we're actually going to scale the business through this platform. So myself and everyone in the team thinks about these sorts of things every single day. And then, yeah, I would say this is a typical day. Just kind of going through that whole cycle every single day is pretty typical.
So the pace is pretty high, actually. I mean,
yeah.
How many hours per day you work?
On average, I would say 14 on average.
14.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you handle stress and pressure that you deal with?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest stress that we have to deal with is cash flow and figuring out how we're going to balance cash flow with how we pay people out. And so since we actually became a rather high revenue a company that's producing a lot of revenue pretty quickly, and we have to pay people out, it became a pretty challenging thing because we didn't take investment. The investment that we took was rather small relative to our revenue, because our revenue was significantly more than the investment that we took. And so that poses challenges, as in any services company. If you look at how do you balance the cash flow in versus the cash flow out, and when clients don't pay on time or when people don't pay on time or whatever it is, you have to figure out how you're going to balance how you take cash in, and then take cash out, right? And pay people and pay your employees and all that sort of stuff. So how I deal with that, I mean, it's just, you just deal with it, right? You just consistently deal with it all the time and just make sure that things get done. And yeah, I mean, stress is just one thing. It's just, it's one thing in this whole gambit of life, right? It's nonstop. There's always stress. So yeah, but I just deal with it by doing my best to take care of the problems immediately.
So the hardest thing is to raise money for the company.
Well, not raising money, just dealing with the challenges of the cash flow itself, right? I mean, raising money is one thing that's difficult, and we're currently in that process now. Unfortunately, it hasn't been the biggest hurdle, but in general, raising money is a difficult task. But dealing with cash flow when you don't have a buffer of cash is difficult, because you have to figure out how you're going to scale the business, while really focusing on how much money is in the account versus how much has to go out. And we might have to pay out $30,000 one day, and for example, we'll have to delay that if we have to pay out $20,000 to contractors, which are more important, and we know we have like a $50K check coming in and all that sort of stuff. So it's just really balancing that stuff, and at the same time trying to scale the business. So those are really the most difficult aspects.
Okay, then, so you said that you work average 14 hours per day.
Yeah.
So where do you find so much energy, and what actually inspires you? Where do you find motivation for doing that?
I'm not sure. I mean, I've just really been a high energy person since I was born, I guess. I don't really know where the energy comes from, I guess. But in terms of being able to, motivate myself, I would say it's just creating something that's really amazing and creating something that has never been able to exist before. So what we're doing with TopTal is we're basically completely revolutionizing the outsourcing industry. We're taking something that traditionally was really difficult and time-consuming, where you have to assimilate teams and you have to be able to, vet people, and making that all very quick and easy. And so that sounds simple, but the processes and the methodologies involved in creating an ecosystem like this and a platform like this is extremely difficult. And so, you know, it's really fascinating working on challenging problems. You know, some of the software problems that I worked on were really deep problems. WebSockets was one of them. My co-founder of my previous company wrote the W3C spec for WebSockets, and we worked on a lot of really challenging real-time elements. And I think, you know, that sort of ethos that we had and that I've always had in working on very deep problems translates over to the outsourcing industry, which is typically a really monotonous, laborious company, right? You don't really have not to be pejorative to anyone running an outsourcing company, but you don't have the smartest, most intelligent people in the world running outsourcing companies. And they're not trying to innovate and really, you know, revolutionize the outsourcing industry. They're basically trying to create a standard outsourcing company where they're taking business in and scaling it up. We're actually fundamentally trying to disrupt the space and change outsourcing forever. So that vision and that goal, I would say, is what drives me every single day.
Nice. So your company is based in, I mean, you have your company in Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that there are too many entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley that are working on trivial apps?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, without question. I think that's probably the biggest problem because you have a lot of really intelligent people who aren't focused on real problems. And there's, of course, all sorts of articles about this. You see them every year. You see them all the time, especially talking about how, you know, great engineers aren't working on tackling real problems. And I think that's a really difficult thing to solve in terms of how do you make something like that a, you know, a ubiquitous notion as to how you work on real problems and getting that into the minds of everyone. I would say myself as a software engineer, that was something that was even difficult for me at first, right? So, I mean, I was writing, you know, all sorts of crazy software before I ended up getting into solving, you know, writing software that solved very real problems. And so we're actually focusing on real problems for that fact, right? And so it's about identifying the real problems and then going after the real problems. And yeah, there's really a big gap between that in Silicon Valley and the people actually who are writing the software in general, I would say.
So your new project is about finding the most talented developers, and I mean, do you get them like trivial jobs or like something new, something inventive?
No, so the difference between companies like Odesk, Elance, Guru.com, all these different companies, and our company is the fact that we provide longer term contracts, higher pay, even opportunities to work within the companies full time. A great example is a company that got acquired, Dean Deal, back in Switzerland, was looking for a lead engineer. We basically had a guy in Poland fly in, work on site. He became the CTO of the company, and then the company got acquired. So, you know, it's stories like that which are really just great because it's somebody in a country where there's just not that much opportunity, and we just fundamentally changed his whole life by, you know, bridging that gap. And we're working harder and harder to make that happen more and more and more.
So what do you think that are some recent trends here in Silicon Valley?
Some of the recent trends, I mean, obviously everyone knows mobile is huge, and I think that's just getting started. You know, in terms of the enterprise space, I think you're going to see a lot of disruptions in enterprise because the enterprise space has notoriously been driven by, you know, ERP applications, companies like Oracle, IBM, SAP, and all this sort of stuff. As you see, you know, Oracle just acquired SuccessFactors. Salesforce did their acquisition of their talent platform, and you know, those were, I guess you could say, smaller companies that, you know, were, you know, acquired into the enterprise space. But you see more and more enterprise companies that are coming up and that are tackling real issues in a really innovative, user-friendly straight away. You know, you don't have the DOS terminals that you did, you know, typing in information anymore. People are creating really friendly user interfaces and very nice experiences for the people in the enterprise space. And you're only going to see that happen more and more. And it's becoming a really well-known thing that, you know, enterprise is the sort of #1 thing to get into, because it's a lot easier to make money with, and the innovation space is just wide open. So, yeah, I would say those two things are what I see. I'm sure there's other trends, but yeah.
So your advice to programmers all around the world is that Silicon Valley is the place to be, or not?
I would say, if you're a software engineer, no question about it.
But you said that you live, I know that you live in Budapest.
Sure. Well,
how can you handle this if you're not here?
So that's a little bit of a cheat, right? So the fact that I've lived in Silicon Valley allows me to live in Budapest. But if you've never lived in Silicon Valley, you have a really big disadvantage in this world. I mean, I have a lot of connections and experience and all this sort of stuff in Silicon Valley, and that allows me and my co-founder, who also has experience here, to, you know, live in Budapest with the mindset of Silicon Valley and, you know, raise money by sending emails, because we already have the connections. We've already, you know, have a high level of trust and integrity in the people in our network. And so
if I get it right, the social network is really important.
Your network is absolutely extremely important if you're an entrepreneur, no question about it. And
but how you get, how to get a real good social network?
Yeah.
How did you manage to build that?
So that's a fascinating question, and it's something that I kind of dissected with myself and my friends who are really connected. And what we've noticed is, we've actually had this conversation, is, you know, one of my friends who's one of the most connected guys who I know, he worked at Zynga, and he did just amazing things at Zynga and really had a lot of respect within the company. And him getting to know Mark Pincus and him getting to know all the guys in the area really put him, you know, on top, and allowed him to connect with a lot of great people. So it was him working with great people that allowed him to meet other great people. Now, myself, when I worked at Slide, that was a company that was founded by a lot of the co-founders of PayPal, right? So I got to meet Peter Thiel, I got to meet Scott Bannister, I got to meet all these great people, you know, Max Levchin.
So this was luck, or?
Well, you know, you go to parties, right? Slide throws parties. All the co-founders
So
of Facebook
parties
are there.
play a major role in
PayPal.
Parties play a major role in.
Parties play a major role, but these are very private parties, right? And so.
Yeah, but how can you get to that private parties?
You work within a great company, right?
Yeah,
and so, you know, the companies throw parties, and then you're invited to the party because, you know, you're part of that great company. And this is really how Silicon Valley works. And so.
Yeah, but if you come here for the first time,
sure.
How to get to these parties? How to get involved in that social network?
Sure. So.
Can you tell me this?
So the thing that I would recommend is kind of schmoozing your way in. I guess that's an option, right? Or just trying to get in there, because people are going to question you. They're going to say, "Who are you?" and "How did you end up here?" and really get to understand how you got to this party, who you are. And so, you know, that's one thing. I would really try to hone your skill set and to try to get involved in some of the great companies. Because once you're associated to the great companies, you become great yourself, and people recognize you as a great person. This is just how it works, right? You know, me being a part of Slide was kind of a fascinating revelation in my life. When I joined the company, it was known as a great company, but the second it got acquired by Google, it was another story. Because you were known as the guy who was part of Slide that got acquired by Google. And it's things like that which are really, you know, which you have to try to align yourself for and try to position yourself for. Now, in my case, I didn't position myself for that at all. Actually, when I joined Slide, I didn't even know what Slide was. And my last interview was actually with Max Levchin. And I didn't know who he was going into the interview. And he asked me a bunch of questions about, you know, how do you do some database stuff and scalability questions, sort of software stuff. He's a great software engineer himself. But you know, being a part of that company really just took my life to a whole other level, I would say, and just in terms of my credibility. But it's really powerful stuff, and you should try to align yourself, you know, with that. And I think it's really honing your skills. You know, if you're really great at what you do, you should be able to be a part of a great company.
Yeah, but
or create a great company.
Okay, but I know that you dropped from the high school.
That's correct.
Do you regret that decision?
So I'll answer that, but how does that correlate to? Is that a separate question?
No, it actually correlates to it because.
Due to the credibility factor.
I mean, yeah.
Sure. So you know, Silicon Valley is a really strong meritocracy. People could identify within me that I had the chops to be a great software engineer due to my raw intelligence. And so when I would go into an interview and their lead architect and the CTO and all these people.
So nobody asked you where you graduated?
No, they just gauge your intelligence, you as a person. You know, I got in there somehow. My resume spoke volumes about myself. My previous company, Photolog, which again, it was just the raw intelligence that got me in the door. And so, you know, it's really just a meritocratic system in Silicon Valley, much more so than anywhere else in the world. Now, to hit on your point of dropping out of high school, do I regret it? There are certain aspects of it that I think I would have liked to experience. You know, just having the experience of university and all that sort of stuff sounds fun, and it sounds like a really great time. But I don't regret it in my professional career. It actually helps me because it has this enigmatic mystique to how the fuck did you get to here by dropping out of high school? Because that's so contrarian to everything that you're taught when you're growing up, to go to a great university and study and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you diss all the school system.
Right.
You're successful even though you didn't even finish the high school.
Right, precisely.
That's my point, you know.
Right, and so you know, it's, yeah, I mean, it depends where you are in the world, you know.
Yeah.
Really, but if you go to Silicon Valley specifically.
So in Silicon Valley, the only thing that is worth is what you can do, and that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Is there any message that you could send? I mean, you could pass to Slovenian students. Just tell them how to get here. I mean, is it worth it?
Yeah, I mean, it's worth it for anyone who wants to be a software engineer, an entrepreneur, somebody in the tech sector, even in the investment sector. It's an amazing ecosystem of people that's unlike anything. You're going to be in shock for years of how extraordinary the experience is. If not your whole lifetime. Some people just never get over it. It's so amazing, and it truly is. It's really, it's just unlike any place in the world. And so the opportunity to come to Silicon Valley, if it ever came about, I would say absolutely take it up. It would change your whole life. And hopefully, if your motive is to start a company, you get connected with the right group of people and you can, you know, make it happen.
Nice. I have also one question from the audience, and they're asking, what is your favorite pet and why?
My favorite pet?
Yeah. What would you say?
A cat.
A cat.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. So, Taso, thank you for being here. Thank you for all your answers, and I wish you luck. Thank you.
Thank you.